The storm outside battered the towering mansion, lightning flashing across the night sky, illuminating the grand facade in stark, fleeting brilliance. Inside, the usual air of calculated silence was broken by the sudden slam of the front door. The sound echoed through the cavernous halls, startling the bodyguards stationed at every corner. At the very heart of this fortress, seated behind his imposing mahogany desk, sat Dae-Hyun Kim, known across the underworld as the ruthless Mafia lord of Seoul. A man whose name alone commanded fear, respect, and obedience. Tonight, he was supposed to be reviewing his empire's latest transactions, consolidating power, and planning his next ruthless move. But he was distracted by the noise, a sound that should never have come from someone he once loved. He rose abruptly, the leather chair groaning under his sudden weight. His dark eyes, sharp as blades, narrowed as he stormed toward the source of the disturbance. The grand hallway stretched endlessly, adorned with priceless artwork, marble floors reflecting the dim light of crystal chandeliers. And there she was, Aisha, his ex-wife, his black ex-wife, scrubbing the floors as if the mansion belonged to her now, a mop in her hand and determination burning in her gaze. But that was not all. By her side were their triplets, no more than 7 years old, diligently helping, little hands soaked in soapy water, their faces smeared with suds and exhaustion. The sight struck him like a bullet. His heart, buried beneath years of cold calculation, skipped. "Aisha?" His voice was low, incredulous, laced with something he had not felt in years, shock. She paused, not even flinching. "Dae-Hyun," she said, her voice calm but firm, eyes locking with his. "You're home early." He stepped closer, fists clenching, rage bubbling beneath the surface. What are you doing here? Why are you—" He couldn't finish the question. It didn't make sense. The woman he once loved, the mother of his children, reduced to scrubbing the floors of the very house he ruled like a king of shadows? And the kids, his kids, working beside her like obedient little soldiers in some twisted tableau of servitude? Aisha didn't answer immediately. Instead, she wiped her hands on the rag, glanced at the children, and spoke as though addressing a stranger. They needed a place to stay, and clearly, you're too busy running an empire to care what they eat, where they sleep, or who teaches them right from wrong. I can't do nothing, Dae-Hyun. Not when it comes to our children. Her words were dagger sharp, cutting through the layers of his pride. For a moment, he stood frozen, watching the 3 little versions of himself and Aisha, each reflecting fragments of their combined past, their laughter muted under the weight of their current reality. One of the triplets, a boy with his mother's fierce eyes, tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, he looks mad. Are we in trouble?" Aisha crouched, smiling softly, though there was tension in her jaw. "No, my love. Just stay focused on helping me clean. That's all." Dae-Hyun's mind raced. Every scenario he could imagine seemed impossible. This wasn't part of any plan, any scheme, any reality he had ever considered. The house had security cameras, alarms, private staff. Nothing like this should have been happening without his knowledge. He was the king here. Everything was under his control. And yet, here was Aisha, asserting control over his domain in the most humiliating way imaginable. "You think you can just walk back into my life, into my home, like this?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying emotions he refused to acknowledge. Aisha's expression hardened. "I'm not walking back into anything. I'm here for them, she said, gesturing to the triplets. For our children. You've built walls, Dae-Hyun. Walls around money, around power, around fear. But I've built my own walls too, around my children, and I won't let them fall because of you. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned on the mop, her stance steady, eyes blazing. I'm not afraid of you. The words hit him harder than any gunshot could. He had spent years building a reputation as untouchable, merciless, untamed, and yet here was a woman who had once loved him, standing firm, unshaken in the face of his fury. He realized, in that moment, that his greatest power, the fear he commanded, meant nothing to her, nothing at all. I didn't know, he stammered, though he hated himself for it. I didn't know you were living here. Why didn't you call? Aisha straightened, shaking her head. Calling you? And say what? Hey, Dae-Hyun, can we come live in your mansion because you abandoned us? No. I came because they needed me. And because you need to see that not everything revolves around your empire. Sometimes it's about people. Sometimes it's about love. Sometimes it's about righting the wrongs you keep hiding behind your suits and threats. The words pierced him deeper than any betrayal he had ever faced. He had enemies, yes, dozens, hundreds, but none had ever cut through him like this. Her courage, her defiance, her sheer audacity to step into his lair and claim her own space. It was humiliating, electrifying, and intoxicating all at once. One of the triplets, a girl with a tiny braid bouncing with each movement, looked up and said softly, Daddy, can we keep helping, please? Her innocence, combined with her mother's strength, shattered something within him. He could feel the tug, the part of him buried under years of crime, greed, and ambition that had once been gentle, loving, capable of tenderness. The thought that he might have lost that part forever made his chest ache. Aisha's voice softened, though it retained authority. Don't look at me, Dae-Hyun. Look at them. They're your legacy, whether you like it or not. And if you can't step up for them, I will. The air in the room shifted. For the first time in years, Dae-Hyun felt exposed, vulnerable. He wanted to lash out, to retreat into the cold cocoon of power he had meticulously built. But the truth was undeniable. He had failed his family. And now they were here, in front of him, demanding he confront it. The tension was unbearable. He could feel the storm outside mirroring the chaos within. The rain beat harder against the windows, thunder rolling across the mansion. But inside, the real storm was far more personal. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, the silence stretched, heavy with unspoken guilt, love, resentment, and hope. And in that moment, the unthinkable happened. Dae-Hyun took a step closer to the children, kneeling beside them for the first time in years, and for the first time in a long while, his eyes softened. I'll help, he whispered, almost to himself. I'll help. Aisha didn't relax. Not yet. But a faint, almost imperceptible nod acknowledged the opening, the first crack in the walls they had built around each other. As the night deepened, conversations began, tentative but urgent, filled with sharp questions, confessions, and revelations. The children laughed, argued, and played, breaking the icy tension bit by bit. Dae-Hyun realized that this chaos, this family, was something he had been starving for without knowing it. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a whisper of fear emerged. What if letting them in again meant losing control entirely? Before the storm outside subsided, before the first light of dawn, the mansion had already changed. Not physically, but in the spaces between, in the air charged with unsaid emotions, broken pride, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was possible. If you're loving this story, make sure to hit subscribe and comment your thoughts so we can continue unveiling what happens next in Dae-Hyun's twisted empire and fragile family ties. And don't forget to like. This story is just getting started. Dae-Hyun lingered in the hallway, watching his children scrub the marble floor with tiny hands, their faces glowing faintly under the chandelier light. He could feel the weight of years pressing down on him, years of absence, of ruthless ambition, of a life built around fear instead of love. Each soapy swipe of the mop, each giggle that broke the silence, seemed to accuse him silently. He swallowed hard, trying to summon the composure that had never failed him before, but it slipped like water through his fingers. Aisha moved with an efficiency he couldn't ignore, cleaning every corner with precision, but there was no shame in her movements, no hesitation. She was unbending, immovable, a force of nature he had once adored and now feared in equal measure. "You can't just sit there staring, Dae-Hyun. Pick up a rag. Help them," she commanded, her tone sharp but not unkind. He froze. Help them? Was she insane? He, the Mafia lord feared across 2 continents, reduced to cleaning a floor? But the truth hit him like a punch. He had nothing. No leverage, no control. Not here. Not tonight. Not over her, and certainly not over the triplets. He looked down at their tiny faces and saw the silent question in their eyes. Will you be our father, or will you remain a stranger? He clenched his jaw. I don't know how, he muttered. Aisha's laugh was dry, not mocking, but full of incredulity. You've conquered empires, Dae-Hyun, and yet you can't mop a floor? Don't worry, I'll teach you. She handed him a mop, the heavy handle unfamiliar in his large hands. He stared at it for a moment, then sighed, finally taking it. The first swipe was awkward, clumsy, almost comical. The children giggled quietly, and Aisha rolled her eyes, but smiled just a little. It was a fragile, human moment, one that seemed almost alien in this house of steel, money, and fear. But as the night stretched on, the conversation deepened, and walls began to crumble. Why now? Dae-Hyun asked quietly as he wrung out the mop. Why appear in my life after all these years? Were you planning to humiliate me? Aisha stopped, looking directly into his eyes, her expression unreadable. Humiliate you? No. I came because I had to, because the children need me, because they've suffered, and because I refuse to let your empire, your reputation, or your pride dictate their lives. I won't let them inherit your emptiness. The words hit him harder than any gunfire could. He felt the old anger rise, the one that had made him untouchable in the criminal underworld. But it was tinged now with guilt, guilt he couldn't hide. Emptiness. Maybe I did fail you, he admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. But you don't understand. Everything I've done, I did for them. For us. For our future. Aisha shook her head. No, you did it for yourself. Power, fear, control. And somewhere along the way, our children got lost. And I had to find them. I had to find you. I had to find me. The triplets, sensing the tension, paused in their cleaning and watched. The smallest, a boy with mischievous curls, spoke up softly. Daddy, are you really our dad? Or just scary? Dae-Hyun froze. The question landed like a hammer blow. He knelt down, eyes level with the boy. I am your father, he said carefully, voice thick. I've been far away, but I am. The boy hesitated, looking at Aisha for confirmation. She gave a slight nod. He's trying, sweetie. That's all we can ask right now. Tears threatened Dae-Hyun's eyes. He didn't let them fall, but the tightness in his chest was undeniable. The house, once a fortress of intimidation, now felt smaller, warmer, almost suffocating with the rawness of emotion. Hours passed as the trio worked, and Dae-Hyun learned the strange rhythm of domesticity, scrubbing, mopping, tidying, and laughing, in small doses. He realized he had missed the subtle chaos of family life, the way arguments over small things could be as painful as gunfights, but far more human. And then came the conversation that changed everything. "Do you know why I left you?" Aisha asked, her voice low, almost mournful. "Because I believed in you. I believed in us. I believed that behind the mask of the ruthless Mafia lord, there was a man who could be something more. And when I found out you couldn't see beyond your empire, I left. I had to protect our children from the man you were becoming." Dae-Hyun's fist tightened on the mop handle. He remembered those nights, the endless work, the violence, the decisions that cost lives, and the price they had all paid. I thought if I built an empire, I could protect you. I thought power meant safety. Aisha's eyes softened, though the hurt remained. Power is nothing without love, Dae-Hyun. And if you want to earn a place back in our lives, you'll need to prove you've changed. Not for me, not for them, for yourself. The tension between them was electric. Every word, every glance, every gesture carried decades of history. The air was thick with unspoken questions. Can trust be rebuilt? Can love survive betrayal? Can a man feared across continents learn to be vulnerable in his own home? The triplets, meanwhile, were growing restless. The girl tugged at Dae-Hyun's sleeve. "Daddy, will we have breakfast soon?" He blinked, momentarily taken aback. Breakfast, simple, ordinary, and yet to him it felt revolutionary. He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Yes, breakfast. Let's eat together." Aisha allowed herself a small smile, a rare softness that made his heart ache. "Good. And after breakfast, we have a lot to talk about. About rules, about responsibilities, about trust." Dae-Hyun nodded, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust had been shattered, relationships strained to their limits. The path ahead would be filled with conflict, with confrontation, with moments where old habits and instincts threatened to undo everything. But for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the night deepened and the storm outside finally subsided, he stayed awake longer than usual, watching Aisha tuck the children into their temporary beds. Her movements were graceful, precise, protective. And in that moment, Dae-Hyun realized that he had underestimated her, and underestimated the strength of what they had once shared. He leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself to breathe. The house was quiet now, except for the soft, rhythmic breathing of the triplets. And yet, the quiet was deafening, full of questions, full of possibilities, full of a future that hung by the thinnest of threads. He knew the battles ahead would be more complicated than any turf war, more dangerous than any rival boss. Because this battle wasn't for money or territory. It was for hearts, for souls, for family. And Dae-Hyun was determined not to lose again. Before the scene faded, he glanced at the camera, as if breaking the fourth wall. a subtle smirk forming. The following morning, sunlight cut through the curtains of the grand mansion, splashing across the polished floors that Dae-Hyun had scrubbed alongside Aisha and the triplets. The children were already awake, chattering excitedly about breakfast, their energy bouncing off the walls, in stark contrast to the quiet tension that lingered between their parents. Dae-Hyun moved stiffly, still adjusting to the rhythm of domestic life. Each small movement, the pouring of milk, the flipping of eggs, the careful placement of dishes, felt foreign. Yet he persisted, for their sake. "You know," Aisha said as she arranged plates for the children, "you might actually survive this domestic life if you try." There was a hint of teasing in her tone, but her eyes were sharp, assessing him. "Don't get too comfortable. I'm watching." He allowed himself a small, reluctant smile. "I'll survive. Don't worry. But I make no promises about being graceful." The triplets giggled. "Daddy, you already spilled the milk," one exclaimed, pointing at a puddle forming near the table. Before he could respond, the sharp ring of his phone sliced through the morning calm. Dae-Hyun's expression hardened as he picked it up, instantly slipping back into the icy demeanor that had once terrified entire gangs. "Dae-Hyun," a familiar cold voice said on the other end. "I see you're distracted." He didn't need to ask who it was. Chang-Soo, his right-hand man, his most trusted enforcer, and his closest friend in the underworld. "What's going on?" Dae-Hyun asked, trying to keep his voice calm, steady. "They've moved," Chang-Soo replied, urgency creeping in. "The rival gang, the Han-Seong crew. They know you're distracted. They're mobilizing. They've been waiting for you to lower your guard, and tonight, they strike. You need to be ready." Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened. His empire wasn't built on luck. It wasn't built on chance. And yet, here it was, a perfect storm of domestic distraction, vulnerable children, and a rival crew itching for blood. He looked at Aisha, whose expression had shifted instantly from domestic calm to sharp awareness. "They're coming?" she asked, a low edge in her voice. "Yes," he admitted. "Tonight. If I leave now, the children are vulnerable. If I stay, my empire is at risk." The children, sensing tension, clung to their mother. "Mom, what's wrong?" the youngest asked, voice small and frightened. Aisha kneeled, brushing his curls away. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart. Daddy's going to handle it." Dae-Hyun's hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from frustration. He had finally begun to taste this fragile human life, and now the underworld's relentless demands were threatening to rip it all away. He made a decision, swift and unflinching. "No," he said firmly. "We don't leave. We fight this together. I won't let them touch my children. Not now. Not ever." Aisha's eyes widened slightly. "Dae-Hyun, you can't handle them alone. This isn't just a business matter." He shook his head. "No, but you're not just my ex. You're their mother. And if we survive tonight, I want to survive it, with my family." The tension in the room thickened. The triplets clung to each parent, sensing the seriousness of the conversation, even if they didn't understand all the details. Hours later, the mansion had transformed. What was once a serene home now had the quiet hum of strategy, planning, and preparation. Dae-Hyun's private security team moved with precision, weapons and surveillance cameras checking every corridor. The children were kept out of immediate danger, but close enough that he could see them, know they were safe. Aisha moved silently through the halls, her presence unassuming but commanding. We can't just wait for them to come through the front gate. They'll try to enter through the west wing. It's less secure, she pointed out, her mind sharp, calculating. I know about this because I've studied your enemies. Dae-Hyun blinked, impressed despite himself. You've been paying attention to the underworld? Aisha shrugged, expression neutral. Someone has to make sure our children survive. The triplets peeked around the corner, curiosity mingled with fear. Are we going to be okay? The eldest asked. You're going to be more than okay, Dae-Hyun promised, his voice firm. I won't let anything happen to you, and I won't fail again. As night fell, the first signs of the enemy arrived. Cars creeping through the shadows, their headlights cutting through the perimeter of the mansion's security. Dae-Hyun and his team were ready, guns in hand, strategies laid out. But the tension wasn't just tactical, it was personal. Every second could decide not just territory, but family, life, and loyalty. Aisha stayed close to the triplets, whispering instructions and calming their fears. Stay behind me. Trust your father, she said. The words, simple yet loaded, resonated with Dae-Hyun. He felt the weight of responsibility heavier than any empire he had built. The first confrontation was brutal and chaotic. The rival gang had expected him to be distracted, unprepared. But Dae-Hyun was not that man anymore. He moved with lethal precision, protecting his family and eliminating threats with cold, calculated skill. The air was thick with gunfire, shouting, and chaos, but he never left the children's side, even as Aisha shielded them with her body. In the middle of the battle, a rival gang member broke through one of the side corridors, aiming directly for the children. Dae-Hyun reacted instinctively, tackling the intruder to the ground, a gun pressed to the man's temple. Not one step closer. His voice was steel, unwavering, fueled by raw emotion. The triplets clung to Aisha, eyes wide, but slowly realizing that their father, this terrifying, powerful man, was willing to die to protect them. Something shifted in their perception. Fear turned into awe. Resentment softened into hope. Hours passed. The rival gang retreated, beaten back by a combination of brute force and strategy. The mansion was damaged, but the family remained intact. Silence returned, heavy and complete. Dae-Hyun sank to his knees in exhaustion, surveying the aftermath. Blood, broken furniture, shattered glass, a battlefield within what was supposed to be a home. But his family was alive, safe, intact. He looked at Aisha, who had cuts and bruises, yet stood strong. Their eyes met, unspoken words passing between them. This battle was won, but the war, the real war, was just beginning. He turned to the children, brushing soot and debris from their clothes. We're safe, he said softly. Thanks to both of you. Aisha gave him a sharp glance, a mixture of relief and exasperation. Don't get sentimental now. We still have a lot to fix, and you have a lot to prove. Dae-Hyun chuckled softly, despite the exhaustion. I know, and I'll prove it, every day. The triplets smiled faintly, their trust in him growing. And for the first time in years, Dae-Hyun understood what it meant to truly fight for something. Something beyond power, beyond fear, beyond money. To fight for love. The mansion was quiet now, the storm of the night replaced by the eerie calm that followed a battle. Broken glass glimmered in the dim light. Walls bore marks of gunfire, and the marble floors they had cleaned just hours ago were scarred with debris. Dae-Hyun walked through the main hall, each step heavy, as though the weight of the night pressed down on him. He had survived countless battles, faced enemies who would kill without hesitation, But nothing had rattled him like the thought of losing his children tonight. Aisha moved beside him, silent but alert. She had taken stock of the damages with sharp eyes, noting which areas were secure and which would need repair. "This isn't just a fight for territory, Dae-Hyun," she said quietly. "It's a test. For you, for them, for all of us. They're trying to see if your priorities have shifted, if family matters more than power." Dae-Hyun clenched his fists. "And it does. It always has. I just didn't know how to show it." Aisha's gaze softened slightly, but she didn't let down her guard. "Then prove it. Not just with words, but with actions. They need to see the man behind the empire, the father, the protector." The triplets appeared from the staircase, their tiny faces streaked with dirt and tears, but still wide-eyed and alert. The eldest, a boy with sharp features reminiscent of Dae-Hyun, spoke first. "Daddy, will they come back?" Dae-Hyun knelt, bringing his face level with theirs. "They might, but if they do, we'll be ready, together." A soft, almost reluctant smile crossed Aisha's face as she reached out to brush the hair from their youngest daughter's face. "He means it, children. But we must also be cautious. Your father's world, it's dangerous, and sometimes danger finds us even when we try to hide." The children nodded, absorbing the gravity of their lives, yet comforted by the presence of their parents. Later, as night fell again, Dae-Hyun found himself alone in the study, staring at the darkened city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The weight of the dual worlds he inhabited, Mafia lord and father, pressed heavily upon him. He had survived assassination attempts, gang wars, betrayals, and corruption, but the stakes had never been more personal. Aisha entered quietly, standing behind him. "You're thinking too much," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You're letting the fear control you. You need to focus on what's real, our family, and what's real is right in front of you." He didn't turn to her immediately. "Do you think I can balance it? Can I really protect them and still run an empire?" Aisha's eyes softened, but her answer was unwavering. "You have to. You're not the same man who left. And if you want to survive, if you want them to survive, you must be different. Stronger, smarter, better." Dae-Hyun finally faced her, a rare vulnerability showing in his dark eyes. "I've done terrible things, Aisha. Crimes, betrayals. People are dead because of me. And now I want to fix what I can, but it may not be enough." She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "It's never too late to try. That's all anyone can do. And right now, trying means keeping our children safe. Everything else comes second." The children, sensing the tension, came to the study, their small hands reaching for both parents. Dae-Hyun held them close, feeling a protective surge he hadn't known he possessed. The triplets clung to him, their warmth and trust anchoring him in a way power never had. Suddenly the phone rang again. Dae-Hyun's expression hardened as he picked it up. Chang-Soo's voice was tense, urgent. "Boss, it's escalating. Hansong crew isn't retreating. They've brought reinforcements. They know you're distracted by family. You need to decide, fight them head on or evacuate." Dae-Hyun's eyes narrowed. "No, we stay. We fight if they come, but I won't abandon my children again. Do you understand?" "Yes, boss," Chang-Soo replied, the uncharacteristic tremor in his voice betraying his fear. "But it's dangerous. They won't hold back." Dae-Hyun hung up and turned to Aisha. "They're coming back, and this time it's bigger. I can't do it alone, and I won't ask you to leave. But I need you with me." Aisha nodded, determination replacing hesitation. "Then we fight, together." Hours later, the mansion was a fortress once more. Dae-Hyun's security team doubled patrols, set traps, and reinforced weak points. Aisha coordinated the children's safety zones, ensuring their small haven remained secure. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. The triplets, though scared, showed courage beyond their years. "Daddy, we can help too," the eldest said, gripping a small toy like it was a weapon. Dae-Hyun knelt, looking into their eyes. "Your job is to stay safe, little warriors. Leave the rest to me." But he knew that even the best laid plans could fail. The world he inhabited was ruthless, unforgiving, and unpredictable. And the people he trusted, or thought he trusted, could betray him at any moment. When the enemy arrived, it was chaos once again. Gunfire, shouting, the shattering of glass, and the roar of engines filled the night. Dae-Hyun moved with lethal precision, covering exits, protecting his family, and countering attacks with strategic brilliance. Aisha fought alongside him, her strength and courage remarkable. She was no longer just a mother. She was a partner in survival, a strategist, a shield. Together they repelled the intruders, their combined force unstoppable. After the dust settled, they surveyed the aftermath. The mansion bore fresh scars, but the family remained intact. Dae-Hyun looked at Aisha, gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "You're incredible," he admitted quietly. She smiled faintly, tired but unwavering. "We're incredible. Don't forget that." The triplets ran to them, hugging tightly, their small arms wrapping around both parents. "We're okay," the youngest exclaimed. Dae-Hyun held them close, breathing in their safety, their warmth, their life. For the first time, he realized that power, territory, and fear were meaningless compared to this family. He turned to the camera, a hint of a smirk forming. "If you think surviving the Mafia world is hard, try surviving it with family in the crossfire. Stay tuned. Things are only getting more intense." Remember to subscribe, like, and comment below if you want to see how this empire and family survives the next wave of threats. The morning after the second battle, the mansion was a war zone frozen in time. Broken furniture, scorch marks, and shattered glass littered the floors. But the air inside was strangely calm. The triplets played cautiously in a cleared corner, their laughter faint but present, a reminder of the fragile peace that had been won. Dae-Hyun moved through the halls, surveying the damages with a sense of grim determination. Every crack in the walls mirrored the cracks in his life, the mistakes, the absences, the lives he had hurt. Aisha appeared beside him, a soft but firm presence. "You can't fix everything with money or force," she said quietly, scanning the room. Some things need care, patience, and presence. Your children, they need that. And you need to learn it too." Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened. "I know, but I can't just ignore the Empire. The Hansong crew won't stop. If I don't act, they'll come back stronger. And this time, they might not just take territory. They might take lives, including ours." Aisha's gaze was sharp. "Then act smart, not just fast. Don't let the violence define us. Let it fuel protection, strategy, and preparation. But you must also prioritize your family." He nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent decades believing power alone equaled safety, only to realize tonight that power without love without loyalty, without trust, was hollow. Later, he called a meeting with his closest lieutenants. Chang-Su, Min-jae, and a few others sat around the massive table in the war room, faces tense, expressions unreadable. Dae-Hyun took his seat, a rare vulnerability showing. "They're coming again," he began, his voice steady but low. "Hanseong crew won't stop until they think I'm broken. We cannot underestimate them." Min-jae leaned forward. "Boss, we can take them. But tonight, the fight will be brutal. And the civilians, your children, are at risk. You have to decide if you stay, if you protect your empire, or if you protect them." Dae-Hyun's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the rooms where Aisha and the children were. He clenched his fists. "We protect them, no exceptions. If the empire falls, it falls. But they survive. Everyone else can wait." Chang-Su's voice carried concern. "Boss, you've never done it this way before. You've never let emotion guide decisions over strategy. Are you sure?" "I am sure," Dae-Hyun said, his voice unwavering. "I will not make the same mistakes again. My empire means nothing if my family is gone." After the meeting, Aisha approached him quietly. "You're changing, Dae-Hyun? But don't mistake emotion for weakness. They'll exploit anything they can. You have to stay sharp." "I know," he admitted. "And I'm learning. Slowly. But I won't let fear control me. Not again." The next few days were a blur of preparation. The mansion became a fortress, with secret rooms, hidden exits, and reinforced security systems. Aisha took charge of training the children in emergency safety, making them aware of the dangers without frightening them unnecessarily. The triplets listened carefully, absorbing every word, their respect for their father growing as they saw him balance ruthless strategy with protective love. One evening, while the children slept, Aisha confronted Dae-Hyun in the study. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice tense. "Not all your lieutenants are loyal. Some have been feeding information to Hanseong crew. I've noticed subtle movements, conversations. You're not as invisible as you think." Dae-Hyun's eyes narrowed. "Betrayal?" "Yes," she confirmed, "and it's closer than you imagine." The words struck him like a blow. Years of building loyalty, trust, and fear, now threatened by whispers in the shadows. He realized that this world, this empire, was far more fragile than he had ever allowed himself to admit. "Do you have names?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. Aisha shook her head. "Not yet, but I'm watching, and so should you. They won't hesitate to exploit your new focus on family. If you're not careful, everything could collapse." Dae-Hyun paced, a storm of thoughts and emotions swirling within him. He had survived countless attacks, navigated betrayals, and crushed rivals. But the idea that his own inner circle could betray him shook him to the core. More than that, he realized he was no longer willing to sacrifice his children for the sake of empire. His focus had shifted, and that made him vulnerable, but also stronger in ways he hadn't expected. That night, as the mansion lay quiet, he sat alone, contemplating his next moves. He pulled out an old photograph of Aisha and the triplets, smiling at a time before betrayal, before empires, before blood. He traced their faces with his fingers, a silent promise forming in his mind. "I will protect you. I will not fail again." The next morning, alarms blared. The Hanseong crew had struck again, but this time, Dae-Hyun was prepared. He moved with precision, countering their every move, anticipating their tactics. Every hallway, every corridor, every room was a chessboard, and he was 10 moves ahead. Aisha fought at his side, her presence a steadying force. The children watched from a secure room, witnessing a father willing to risk everything for them. They saw not just power, but vulnerability, courage, and love intertwined. By dawn, the attackers had retreated, leaving the mansion damaged but intact. Dae-Hyun stood in the aftermath, bruised, exhausted, but unbroken. He turned to Aisha, eyes softening. "We did it. They're gone. For now." Aisha's expression softened too, but she remained cautious. "Yes, but this isn't over. Not even close. And you need to be ready for the next wave, because it's coming." The triplets ran to them, exhausted but exhilarated. Dae-Hyun hugged them tightly, breathing in their presence, their safety, their life. He had survived countless battles, but this one, this fight for his family, felt infinitely more important. The sun had barely risen when the mansion trembled under the distant roar of engines. Dae-Hyun stood at the top of the stairs, scanning the horizon through the tall windows. He had expected retaliation from the Hanseong crew, but what he saw now was worse. A convoy of black SUVs rolling through the perimeter, armed men ready for war. Aisha appeared behind him, her hand resting briefly on his arm. "They're escalating. They know we're focused on family now. They'll use it against you," she said, her voice steady, but laced with tension. Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened. "Then we give them a show they won't forget. But no one, especially my children, gets hurt. Not this time." Inside, the triplets were unaware of the full danger, though they sensed something was amiss. "Daddy, what's happening?" the eldest asked, his small face pale but determined. Dae-Hyun knelt, looking directly at him. "Some people think they can scare us, but we're stronger together. We'll be okay, I promise." Aisha gathered the children into a secure room, whispering instructions about staying calm, staying hidden, and staying together. "Trust your father," she said softly. "He's not just the man you see on TV or in stories. He's ours. He's real." Hours passed as Dae-Hyun's team prepared the mansion. Chang-Soo and the lieutenants worked tirelessly, setting traps, reinforcing weak points, and coordinating escape routes. Every hallway, every window, every door was strategically assessed. The mansion had become a battlefield, but one with a purpose: protect family at all costs. When the attackers arrived, chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the halls, shouts and screams punctuating the night. Dae-Hyun moved like a predator, neutralizing threats with precision, his every move calculated, yet fueled by desperation. He was no longer fighting for empire alone. He was fighting for love, for redemption, for the life he had ignored for too long. Aisha, despite scratches and bruises, fought alongside him, her presence a stabilizing force. Together, they moved as a unit, instinctively covering each other, protecting the triplets from harm. It was a dance of violence and strategy, brutality tempered by necessity, love guiding every action. In the middle of the fray, one of the attackers managed to slip past Dae-Hyun's defenses, rushing toward the children's secure room. Aisha intercepted him, striking with deadly precision, her training and instinct perfectly synchronized with her maternal drive. Dae-Hyun arrived seconds later, gun drawn, and together they neutralized the threat. The aftermath was a silent, exhausted victory. The mansion bore new scars, bullet holes in walls, broken furniture, shattered glass, but the family survived, intact and unbroken. Dae-Hyun leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. He looked at Aisha, admiration and gratitude shining in his eyes. "You're incredible," he whispered. She shook her head slightly, brushing blood from her arm. "We're incredible," she corrected, voice steady despite exhaustion. "Don't forget that. And we're not done yet. This fight, it's far from over." The triplets ran to them, tears and laughter mixing as they clung to both parents. Dae-Hyun hugged them tightly, feeling a surge of emotion he hadn't allowed himself in years. This was what mattered. Their lives, their safety, their trust. Everything else, the empire, the power, the fear, was secondary. But even in victory, danger lingered. The Han Seong crew was relentless. Dae-Hyun knew they would regroup, recruit more men, and strike again. And this time, the stakes would be higher, the tactics deadlier. That night, as the family gathered in the living room, Dae-Hyun's mind was restless. He had survived countless battles, yet he had never faced a fight like this one where failure meant losing the people he loved most. He glanced at Aisha, who watched the children, her expression both protective and contemplative. "You're changing, Dae-Hyun," she said softly, breaking the silence. "You're learning what matters. But the world you live in, it won't forgive weakness. You need to be ready for everything, and everyone." He nodded. "I know, and I will. I won't fail them. Not again." The triplets, exhausted, finally fell asleep. Dae-Hyun and Aisha sat together in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on them. He reached for her hand, a rare gesture of vulnerability. "Thank you. For staying, for fighting, for believing in me." Aisha met his gaze, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. "We're in this together. Always." Dae-Hyun knew the path ahead would be treacherous. The Empire demanded loyalty, ruthlessness, and cunning. But he also needed to balance it with humanity, with protection, with family. It was a dangerous equilibrium, one that could tip at any moment. Yet in that moment, he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. The hope that he could be a father, a protector, a man capable of love and power simultaneously. The hope that redemption was possible, even in a world built on blood and fear. The morning after the second major attack, the mansion was eerily quiet. Broken furniture and scorched walls bore testament to the chaos of the previous night. But inside, an uneasy calm settled. Dae-Hyun walked the halls alone, a sense of unease gnawing at him. He had survived countless ambushes, but tonight he felt something deeper, something closer to betrayal. Aisha joined him silently. "You're tense," she observed, her tone calm but probing. "It's not just the enemies outside." Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened. "I feel it. Someone inside is feeding information. I can sense it." Aisha's eyes darkened. "I told you. I noticed subtle shifts, conversations, movements. People who swear loyalty aren't loyal. And you've been distracted by the children. That makes you vulnerable." He clenched his fists. "I can't let it happen again. I won't. But I also can't leave the children exposed. They are my priority now. Always." Before Aisha could respond, Chang-Soo burst into the room, breathless and grim. "Boss, we found something. One of the lieutenants, Min Jae, he's been selling our plans. Hansung crew knows everything. They've been tipped off about the mansion's weaknesses, your movements, even the children's routines." Dae-Hyun's dark eyes narrowed. "Betrayal, inside my walls. How long?" "Long enough to prepare for their second strike. We intercepted a message last night, but it could be too late. They're planning a massive assault within 24 hours. Dae-Hyun's mind raced. He had spent decades trusting his inner circle. Now, one of them had turned, risking not just his empire, but the lives of the triplets. He felt a surge of anger, but also fear, a rare, gnawing fear he had buried under layers of ruthlessness. Aisha stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "We face this together, not just as partners, but as a family. Trust me, I've got eyes everywhere. We'll catch the traitor, and we'll protect our children." He looked at her, vulnerability flickering across his hardened expression. "I've spent my life avoiding betrayal, building walls, commanding fear, and yet I failed where it matters most. My own family. I can't let that happen again." Chung-Soo nodded grimly. "We move fast. I'll handle Min-jae. But we need a plan, boss. They won't give us a second chance." That evening, Dae-Hyun and Aisha gathered the children in the study, explaining that there might be danger approaching. The triplets, sensing the tension but trusting their parents, listened quietly. "Daddy, are we in danger?" the eldest asked, voice trembling. Dae-Hyun knelt, his face close to theirs. "We might face danger, yes, but I promise we'll get through it. Together." Aisha added firmly, "Your father is strong, but strength isn't just muscles or weapons. It's love, strategy, and courage, and you'll see it tonight." The children nodded, holding on to each other, their small hands intertwined. Dae-Hyun felt a protective surge unlike any he had ever known. Every strategy, every plan, every battle henceforth was for them. Their lives were his new empire. Night fell. The mansion became a fortress. Dae-Hyun and Chung-Soo set traps, reinforced weak points, and coordinated teams to watch every exit. Aisha, equally tactical, assigned roles to each member of the security staff, her sharp mind a perfect complement to Dae-Hyun's brute force and strategy. Hours later, the first signs of the enemy appeared. Figures moving in the shadows, vehicles creeping through the perimeter, and faint murmurs carried on the wind. Dae-Hyun and Aisha moved as one, commanding their team with precision, every order calculated, every movement purposeful. Suddenly, Min-jae appeared from the shadows, gun raised, eyes cold. "You didn't think I'd stay loyal, did you?" he sneered. Dae-Hyun's heart sank, but rage quickly replaced shock. "Traitor!" he spat, stepping forward, his eyes burning. "You've endangered everything. My empire, my children, my family. You'll pay for this." Aisha moved beside him, ready to strike. "You made your choice, Min-jae, and now you face the consequences." A battle erupted within the mansion, chaos blending with strategy. Dae-Hyun moved with lethal precision, neutralizing the traitor without hesitation. Aisha, fierce and protective, ensured the triplets remained safe, her movements fluid, deadly, and maternal all at once. When the dust settled, Min-jae lay restrained, the betrayal exposed. Dae-Hyun's hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline and anger. This ends tonight," he muttered. Aisha's gaze softened slightly. "Yes, but remember, the true battle isn't just outside. It's inside. Trust, loyalty, love. Don't lose sight of that, Dae-Hyun." The triplets peeked from the staircase, eyes wide. "Daddy, we're safe?" the youngest asked. Dae-Hyun smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling. "Yes, safe, always." Hours later, alone in the study, Dae-Hyun reflected on the past few days, the attacks, the betrayals, the chaos. He realized something profound. His greatest battles weren't fought with bullets, threats, or money. They were fought with love, trust, and protection. And he had never been more determined to win. Aisha entered quietly, standing beside him. "You're learning," she said softly, And that's what matters. They'll come again. But this time, you're ready. And you have something they'll never have. Family. Loyalty beyond fear. Strength beyond violence. Dae-Hyun nodded, a rare vulnerability flickering in his eyes. Yes, and I won't fail. Not again. I will protect them, even if it costs me everything. The triplets, now sleeping safely in the secure room, were the heartbeat of his new life. He had survived countless enemies, countless betrayals, but nothing mattered more than them. Their trust, their love, their lives. He turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall with quiet intensity. Power, betrayal, danger. I've faced it all, but nothing compares to fighting for family. The night was thick with tension as the Hanseong crew regrouped for their final assault. Dae-Hyun stood at the top of the mansion's main staircase, surveying the perimeter with cold precision. Every shadow, every movement, every whisper of the wind could signal an attack. His empire had survived countless wars, but this was different. This was personal. Aisha joined him silently, her hand resting on his arm. "They've underestimated you. They've underestimated us," she said softly. "This time, we end it. Together." He nodded, eyes dark with determination. "No one threatens my family," and walks away. Inside, the triplets were in their secure room, safe for the moment, but fully aware of the tension surrounding them. Their trust in their father had grown exponentially over the past days. They had witnessed his courage, his strategy, his love. And now, as danger loomed once more, they clung to the hope he had instilled in them. The first wave hit with brutal force, armed men breaching the mansion's gates, vehicles roaring through the perimeter, and gunfire erupting like a storm. But Dae-Hyun was ready. He moved with lethal precision, countering each attack with strategy honed by decades of experience. Every step, every shot, every command was calculated, yet fueled by the desperation to protect his children. Aisha fought beside him, a perfect complement to his strength. Together, they moved like a single entity, their coordination seamless. She protected the triplets when they needed it, striking intruders with deadly efficiency, her eyes fierce with maternal instinct. The battle reached a climax when the leader of the Hansong crew broke through, a figure Dae-Hyun recognized instantly. A fierce duel erupted between them, one fueled by years of rivalry, blood, and vengeance. Dae-Hyun's every move was precise, but his mind never left his family. One misstep could cost lives. Finally, with a swift, calculated maneuver, Dae-Hyun overpowered the rival leader. The man lay defeated, the power of his crew broken. The remaining attackers retreated, leaving the mansion and its inhabitants intact. Exhaustion washed over Dae-Hyun, but it was tempered by relief. His family was safe, and the immediate threat had ended. He turned to Aisha, sweat and blood mingling on their faces. "We did it," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. Aisha's eyes softened, and she smiled faintly. "Yes, but this is just the beginning. Remember, loyalty, love, and courage will always be tested." The triplets ran into their father's arms, tears of relief and joy streaming down their faces. Dae-Hyun held them tightly, feeling a rush of emotion he had never allowed himself to experience. This was his true victory. Not power, not territory, not fear, family. Hours later, the mansion was quiet. Dae-Hyun sat in the study with Aisha, their hands intertwined. "I've spent my life chasing power, fear, and respect," he admitted. "But nothing compares to this, to having a family, to protecting them." Aisha's eyes softened. And now, you know what it truly means to be a man, a father, to balance strength with love, strategy with heart. You've changed, Dae-Hyun, and that's what will carry us forward. He nodded, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. I will never let anything or anyone threaten them again. Not my empire, not my enemies, not even my past mistakes. The triplets, now asleep in their secure room, were the heartbeat of his new life. Dae-Hyun realized he had survived countless battles, faced betrayal, and navigated a ruthless underworld. But this fight, this love, this family, was his ultimate triumph. As dawn broke over the city, casting a golden light across the mansion, Dae-Hyun stood with Aisha on the balcony, watching their children play in the distance. The empire, the violence, the fear, all still existed, but it no longer defined him. He turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall one last time. Power, danger, betrayal. I've faced it all. But nothing is greater than the fight to protect the people you love. This is the story of a man who learned that family is the true empire. Stay with us, because even in the darkest times, love and courage can prevail. Aisha squeezed his hand gently. And don't forget, the next challenge will come, but together we can face anything. Dae-Hyun looked at his children, then back at Aisha, a smile finally breaking through his hardened exterior. Together, he echoed. Before the story faded, a final message appeared for the viewers. Subscribe, like, and comment to follow the journey of love, loyalty, and courage. The next chapter is just around the corner, and you won't want to miss it.